Hello, and welcome to the APhA-ASP Women's Health Campaign Outstanding Chapter presentation. I will now turn it over to the chapter leaders at the University of Texas at Tyler, Ben and Maytee Fisch College of Pharmacy.
Hello, my name is Shelby Downs, and I will go ahead and get started on just going over our women's health campaign from last year. So first of all, just a quick thank you to our supporter, Merck. And like she said, we are from the Ben and Maytee Fisch College of Pharmacy. It's located in East Texas, Tyler, Texas. So just kind of an overview. I'll just start with discussing our contributions to women's health and how we took an interprofessional approach at multiple events, some of our resources that we use, and how we planned our events. We'll also discuss our advertising and coordinating these events to make sure they were successful, and kind of how our follow-up and feedback process went to make the next year also do well. And then our acknowledgements, and we'll have time for questions at the end. So this is just kind of some of the events that we did in our contribution to women's health from our chapter. So one of the biggest things we did was an HPV clinic in Tyler at the campus. We gave over 470 HPV vaccines to college students. We also did a ton of education around HPV vaccines. We did education to freshmen and their parents before they, incoming freshmen, before they started their freshman year. We also did education on campus, so leading up to the different HPV clinics that we did 3 of them. We would do on-campus education, and we would also sign people up for these clinics. And that was a good way to kind of get the word out, as well as educate on the importance of HPV vaccines. We did a ton of fundraising, and along with that, we did Leaders for Life, where we donated over $30,000 to American Cancer Society. We did cancer awareness and educational events that where we partnered with American Cancer Society, and we also did a feminine hygiene product drive with a sorority on campus, where we took in feminine hygiene products and donated it to a clinic in Longview, which is just east of Tyler. And for the sorority that helped us with that drive, we also did a women's health presentation for them, just kind of discussing and honestly just being a resource for them, answering questions that they may have about women's health and things like that. And then we also did some research on the accessibility of emergency contraception in East Texas. We went to all the pharmacies in Smith County and assessed the availability of emergency contraception. So just some of the interprofessional relationships that we built doing our women's health campaign. One of the biggest ones that we're most proud of is our partnership with Texas Medical Association. So they actually provided a grant for a community leadership grant, and Dr. Lee Yu Mitchell in Tyler was actually able to help us out with that. And that grant money was used to buy the HPV vaccines and for the clinic on campus. So that was a really awesome partnership. We didn't actually we didn't have to apply for the grant. We just kind of made it known that we wanted to help use the money for the grant with an HPV vaccine clinic, and so we were given that opportunity. Highway 80 was the clinic that I mentioned earlier that we donated our products to, the feminine hygiene products to, and we actually gave these feminine hygiene products in waterproof containers. This clinic primarily serves the underprivileged, and so we used these products to, we packaged them so that they would be beneficial for them. And then Net Health actually gave us some of the vaccines, and they helped with the education on HPV, the HPV vaccine, and They also helped with advertising for the event. So it was a great way to get the word out in Smith County. And I believe they also helped, they also sent out a notice to a lot of the providers in Smith County, letting them know that we were doing this clinic. And then the College of Nursing, they partnered with us to help recruit nursing students to administer vaccines, as well as assisting with promoting the event. And so that was a really cool partnership because we were all on the same campus and we all kind of had the same goal of like helping with education and getting students on campus involved. And then lastly, one of our huge partnerships was with American Cancer Society, and they provided the educational pamphlets regarding breast cancer and ovarian cancer that were delivered and donated to Highway 80 as well, and also all of our campus-wide events they provided education for. So some of our resources for these events that we did, one of our biggest resources ended up being preceptors, because we needed preceptors there to help with these events, and also campus organizations. We partnered with Colleges Against Cancer, and they helped do a ton of outreach and advertising as well. And then they actually were the ones who totally planned Relay for Life, and so we got to just jump in and help them with that. And then also like the professional organizations throughout the College of Pharmacy, we partnered with them quite a bit as well. And then clinics, and I also want to include pharmacy too, because we did use Brookshires and a couple other local pharmacies to help take up those donations for the feminine hygiene products as well. And then campus resources, we were always in touch with them, finding new innovative ways to get people involved and get the word out. And really being an organization on campus, there are so many resources that our school offered that we didn't even know about. So that was really helpful as well. And then one of the biggest things was we used different networking from people in our chapter that really helped maximize our resources in the community. A lot of people in our chapter are from Tyler, from the East Texas area, so they had a lot of great connections that were able to help us kind of expand on our resources. So I will now hand it over to my teammate, Kirsty.
Okay, hi everybody, I'm Kirsty Harmon. I'm another student at Ben and Maytee Fisch College of Pharmacy with Shelby. So I'm going to take over here talking about how we started planning our events. We really wanted to get a preemptive start with this. We knew this initiative was going to be starting, and we wanted to really hit the ground running with it. We were a very new chapter. We're actually only in the second class of our school. So we really wanted to take this one and run with it because we were kind of behind on some of the other initiatives. So we were excited to kind of be on the same playing level as the other chapters. So it was important for us to start. We actually started before the semester, over the summer, kind of getting together as a board and deciding what passions within women's health that we kind of all shared and what we wanted to really focus on, and sit down and make sure we had hard deadlines for each of the projects that we wanted to do, just to make sure that we had time to fit everything in, and making sure those timelines and deadlines were realistic as well, because obviously we're students first, so making sure we still had time for school and other things like that too. And then of course reaching out, because a lot of these, like the pharmacies where we collected the donations and things, had to get approval from their higher ups as well. So it was important that we got started early with all of them to make sure they had time as well. And then we had time to set the boxes out and collect those donations and set up dates for like the presentation to the sororities and things like that. So that was really important. And then the other big thing for us was making sure that we were including many different populations of women. We felt like college students in general, especially female college students, kind of get overlooked, that we just assume college students are healthy and that they get enough education about their health and things like that. So those sorority presentations and things were really important to us to make sure they were getting that education, as well as like the education with cancer and HPV, preventative type of measures they could take as students, and then reaching the underserved populations through Highway 80. A lot of their population is homeless, so it was important to us to have those waterproof containers like Shelby talked about for those those populations that don't really have access to things like that. So that was a big passion that we wanted to start out when we were planning these events. So then the next big step, of course, is promoting events. So we had all these great plans in place, and we had to get the word out to make sure they were going to be successful. So through our collaborations that Shelby had already kind of talked about, we got a lot of exposure that we weren't necessarily expecting, but it was great that all these partnerships really helped us get this exposure and the word out, and also provided a lot more education than we could have just by ourselves. So nursing, like Shelby talked about, was a big one for us because as another healthcare provider, students, they were also really beneficial in providing a different aspect to the clinics and things like that that we couldn't do just as pharmacy students. So of course we started with just advertising on campus, doing the different digital advertisements, emails, flyers, that kind of thing. And of course then social media became really big for us. So we ended up reaching about 3,800 people through social media by itself, which was really exciting. And then like the local pharmacies, like Shelby had mentioned, their partnerships were huge. So we were able to put those boxes out and some flyers and things like that to educate their communities as well. So we were reaching just beyond the college population, but also out into the larger community. And then our biggest success really was the local news station. So they came and covered our HPV clinics, and we ended up reaching over 9,000 people through these little news sections that they did for us, which was amazing. And we also had a couple print stories go out as well, which reached about 1,100 people. So overall, our promoting ended up being really successful, and that was largely in part to our partnerships that we had, like through Net Health and the Texas Medical Association. So we were so grateful to have that outreach and those opportunities to educate the community through those avenues. So then, of course, the last big part is coordination, making sure that these events are successful and that everything is kind of going according to plan and we're achieving what we're supposed to be achieving. So like I kind of talked about, the timeline was really big for us, making sure we were being realistic with the other things we had to do in our lives being students, and also coordinating our preceptors. So like when we set up the sorority presentation, initially we picked a date that we wanted to go present to them, and we realized none of our teachers or advisors or anything were available on that day. So we had to kind of scramble and find another preceptor from the community to come help us, just serve as a mentor for that presentation in case there was any questions we didn't know the answers to or anything like that. So it was important that we made those timelines way in advance so that we had time to figure those kind of bumps in the road out and still have the event be successful. And then I also kind of touched on this, but we wanted to make sure we had a united vision as an entire leadership board. So it was important that we set up that first meeting during the summer and really talked about these events and what we really wanted to accomplish. So everybody was kind of on the same page, and even if it was the treasurer or the secretary, they also still played a role in these events, which was really important for the success and making these events as big as they were, which we were really excited about. And then, of course, a big thing is always having a backup plan. So for a couple of our events, we really ended up having to use the backup plan. So Shelby and I were also involved with the Relay for Life, like she had mentioned, which is a massive community event that we held on campus. And it was very successful with fundraising things, but we ran into a lot of weather delays and because it was in November and it was freezing cold. It had rained. We were originally supposed to be out on the soccer field and ended up having to move the entire event inside. So we had that plan in place, luckily, beforehand, which was massively important so that we weren't trying to scramble the day before and figure out what we were going to do. So having those plans, and then even like with the HPV clinics, we ran into different issues. Like we had an online registration platform for the students, didn't end up working out because then if they hadn't registered, they couldn't receive the vaccine. So we kind of had to change up our system halfway through, and like how we were running their insurances and things like that. So it was a constant learning process, and flexibility was a huge part in the success of these events because we had to be flexible and adjust as we were going. There's 3 different HPV clinics to make sure the students could get their full series completed, but between each event, something changed or we had to adjust something. So it was constantly being flexible and being able to adjust those plans. And then, I know I've kind of hit on this a lot, but communication with our other partners out in the community, making sure our timelines were going to be realistic for us as well as them, and keeping them up to date on anything we had to change or update throughout the entire process of all these events. And then finally, after the events were completed, we wanted to make sure we followed up and got feedback from everybody kind of involved. So the first step we took is Shelby, as the president, actually sat down and wrote handwritten notes to a lot of our sponsors and different partners and things to just let them know that we really appreciated. They did a lot of work with us and we wouldn't have been as successful without them. So that was a really important personal touch that we took to make sure they understood that. And then another important thing that we realized was really helpful when we got these people involved, we asked them up front how they wanted to get their recognition. So was that on social media? Was that having a banner at our events with their name on it? Did they even want any at all? So we found that that was really successful because they kind of got to pick and choose what they got out of it. And I think they kind of liked having that openness and creativity. It made them feel more a part of the events, I think. So that we found that that was really successful. And then it was also important, like Shelby had mentioned, that we had something to pass on to the next e-board so that they could continue to do these events and they would be successful. So we made sure to create a whole Google Drive with all of our different documentation and feedback from attendees and advisors that we had gotten, as well as our own steps that we had taken in planning the events and different social media posts, anything that we really did so that they would have that to reuse if they needed to or to reference when they started planning their own events. So that was also really great, so that they had something to start with and they didn't have to build from the ground up like we did when we started. And then just a few acknowledgements. These are all of our great partnerships that we had throughout all of our different events. And this really probably isn't even a comprehensive list because we had so many great partnerships that made us so successful. But these are just a few of the organization and individuals that made a very successful events, and we appreciate all of them greatly. And with that, I think that concludes our presentation. We'll be open to any questions. I know this is recorded, but if anybody has anything, we'd be happy to answer any follow-up questions following the viewing of this presentation.
This concludes the presentation. Thank you very much for joining us.